Go ahead and do the
we're
intro
going
for.
here. We're going.
Yeah, we'll go official.
There's so much here. I told you this earlier. I had to write it down, so forgive me for reading.
Oh, you're okay.
Tom deserves a respectable intro.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I'll zip my lip.
We got Tom Hurst today, percussionist, drummer, educator, clinician, promoter, based out of Nashville, Tennessee. Performs with artists like Tracy Lawrence, Gary Allen, Peter Noone, the Backstreet Boys, Sister Hazel, and a whole lot more. You had an extensive career with Disney, performing as a musician. You're the co-founder of Infinity Percussion. You got your bachelor's degree in music, master's degree in music ed. Professor?
Yeah,
Professor?
It is always kind of funny when they call me, they'll call me doctor. I'm like, hey, I didn't do a dissertation. I barely got my master's, bud.
Lee University, University of North Alabama, Tennessee State,
And Nashville State. Now I'm an adjunct at 4. I've been at North Alabama for 6 years, Lee for 5, Tennessee State for 2, and which, by the way, AOB, our HBCU, the AOB won 2 Grammy Awards. Their first time ever a marching band. Our marching band got 2 Grammys last year.
Wow.
It's pretty awesome. TSU is like one of the HBCUs in the South. I mean, it's
literally changing the game. Marching bands are getting Grammys now.
Dude, it's crazy. They got best spoken word and best like original something soundtrack. Derek Green is my boss there, who I love to death. He's like in his early 30s. Awesome. I mean, all our guys are like multi-instrumentalists. I'm like, I play drums. You know, these guys do everything. Yeah. So we've got some great kids. But yeah, I love it. I adjunct, at those 4 places, and I can't
believe all the things that
I'll start because you read that long list and all people heard was Backstreet Boys. That's all they heard.
Yeah,
How did you get hooked up with that?
Being out here,
Orlando,
Disney,
because they're from Orlando.
I was by that time I had left Epcot, but of course I had worked out here for a long time, and I think I was subbing for Antonio Legwis's groups over at Universal. So Tony and I go way back. We were student musicians together here at Magic Kingdom in like '85.
The old gosh, I can't remember.
Yeah, Christmas Brass.
Christmas.
Yep.
Yeah,
I was Christmas Brass.
Student musician. This is before I retired, by the way.
There you go. See,
this is my early career.
Okay, so mine are 85, 86, 87. What are your years?
Oh, dude, 2012.
Yeah.
Your toy band years?
What?
Your toy band years?
My toy band years.
2010 for me.
2010?
Wow.
Yeah, just in front of you.
Just 1 year.
Do you know I never did toys? I did Monk Band, which probably didn't exist by the time you guys came along. And I somehow, I know what it was. My drum instructor up in North Florida, this guy Paul Rourke, who got me out here to start with, he kind of put a word in for me, and so I was playing bass drum and that. Otherwise, I would have been in toys. I never did toys.
Jeez, you missed out. It was fun.
We have to pause just for a second. Where are we? We have to give context.
Oh, yeah, we got to give context. We're sitting in the back lounge of Sister Hazel's tour bus, this venerable bus. They've been running around on this thing. I've been getting on and off it as a sub for, gosh, I don't know, 2 decades now. They've had this red bus they don't own it, but they lease it.
Nice.
And funny enough, it comes out of Nashville. The home base is like maybe 10 miles from my old house in East Nashville.
This is our first mobile podcast.
Yeah, it's our first mobile podcast.
I wish we could start it up and drive around.
We're just driving around Orlando with fireworks in the background.
Well, I've been telling, like I was telling you guys beforehand, I've been trying forever to get Infinity on tour buses. At least we got Mikey, we got you guys.
I know. At least we got something on the tour bus at this point.
And you just got done with a set too, right?
Yep. We actually just played our first day of 2 days. What is that festival called? Is it
Garden Rocks?
Garden Rocks?
Yeah, Garden Rocks Festival.
So American Garden Stage, where I regaled everyone that would listen, going, well, see those trees out there? They weren't even here when I worked here. I think it literally was 37 years ago when I started at Epcot. I started in '87 full time out there.
No way.
And I was Atmosphere Groups.
You started, but when you started there, talk to me how you started from there and you got to Backstreet Boys.
Okay,
people
Backstreet.
want to hear about the Backstreet Boys.
Let's get there. We'll get there. We'll do this because the Backstreet thing is so funny because, again, you got to understand, I'm their original drummer. I was the first guy, but Tim Stombaugh was their drummer when they got big. I only played for him because, again, I'm a doofus, and just like Sister Hazel, we'll get to that, but I turned down going to Europe with them. Johnny Wright, their manager, who still manages Justin Timberlake, by the way.
Whoa.
Johnny's who hired me way back in the day. But the reason I got the job is a guy named Mark Goff here. Mark is he was their vocal coach. I think he vocal coaches here for Disney for a bunch of stuff. Incredible bass player, though, too. And so I used to hire Mark to play in one of my downtown bands back when Church Street Station was a thing.
Right. Yeah,
and so that was the connection. Mark came to me. I knew him from out here, from being in the Atmosphere Groups. And and they all here, they don't know me as Tom at Disney. It's Jethro.
Jethro?
Everyone's Jethro. Yeah,
That's not even close to Tom.
Well, have you ever seen? Okay, so you got
that name.
you got to understand. As I started out here, like I said in '87, full time in a group called T-Bone Brass, I was the youngest musician on property anywhere. I was 18, and you guys have all worked out here as cast members. But as far as a full time musician, man, I was working with cats that were 30 and 40. The heck, they were my age now.
People
and they
jaded,
and they're looking at me like, I make the same money as this dumb kid.
Yeah.
So the Jethro nickname stuck quick. They're like, big dumb kid likes cornflakes, I was in this full-time group called T-Bone Brass. It was Atmosphere Group at Epcot.
Yeah.
Back then they had 3. We had T-Bone Brass, Future World Brass, and Future Core. I ended up being in all 3 of them over 6 years.
Which pissed off any veteran.
There's a famous picture, I feel like, of you in Future Core with the triple stack.
Yeah, with the triple stack.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah.
So I was in that. So that's and I missed. I was in. That's how John Campese is like my big brother. I've marched in Suncoast Sound. I was in his drum lines, but mostly working out here in the parks with him is how we really got to know each other. And so eventually I matriculated to Future Core when Paulie, who founded Jameters.
Who doesn't know Polly?
Yeah, right. I mean, and you got to know, man, like to Paulie and Future Core, man, he was Future Core. He was like the dude. And then he moves back to Boston for a while. And they're like, well, Jethro, you want to move over to Future Core? And I'm going, I'm scared because I'm like, man, I can't be Paulie. I could do the drumming, but like he just owned that gig.
He's got that Boston charm,
Oh, dude.
that essence.
You nailed it, dude.
You can't.
Everybody
beat that.
loves him.
You got a guy from Brooklyn, and a guy from Boston like that. You know, you can't go up against it.
And back
Fill those
then,
shoes?
you had like Bob Franklin and Jeff Campese, or John's brother was in the group. All those guys, man, they were so tight knit, and I looked up to them. They were like my heroes. I used to go watch their sets, and I'm like, wait, I'm gonna play in Future Core. So that was daunting. But yeah, basically being out here in the Atmosphere groups. During that time period, I was also gigging around Orlando, and that's how I got to know Mark Goff and started hearing about these kids. Well, funny enough, now I forget, there is a connection with Magic of Orlando, the drum corps. 1990, Howie, one of the boys, was in a thing. We had this thing called Micro Magic, and I forget what we called it, something else to start with, but basically Howie was a singer for us. He was just a kid. He was like 13. Wow. And Robert Smith and myself, we were all Suncoast people, and I was helping them start Magic of Orlando, the drum corps.
Right.
And that's the initial connection was with Howie. So then when I went a few years later, I go out, I hear about these boys that are like rehearsing in Kissimmee, and Mark's like, hey, man, you ought to come to the audition. I think they'd like you. I go out there, and it's like all my heroes from out here who are killer drummers.
Yeah.
Honestly, way better than me. And I'm going, well, I'll give it a try. Well, the thing was, I was younger. I kind of fit the look. I'm only like at the time like 24, 25. These dudes are guys like me now.
Sure.
And not fitting the look. And so Howie recognized me and was like, hey, Tom, I remember you. I think he almost called me like Mr. Hurst. I was like, and so I kind of had the in. And so for the next 2 years, we only did, the boys they only would use the band I think we did maybe 6-8 shows with them over that. So, I mean, again, I was with them in the very beginning. I have found there's a YouTube video. I played the show. Their very first show with the band was actually where they got signed, basically. We played in Ohio. It was a SAD convention, Student Against Drunk Driving or whatever. It was their national convention in Columbus. And, I mean, the boys had like a cloth banner hanging. I mean, it's on truss. We're on a big stage like today, but it's like pretty low grade.
Yeah.
And if you find it, it's on. I mean, I can look it up share with you guys. It's on YouTube, and it's like the boys. They come in singing a cappella through the crowd to show that they could sing because those cats could sing. I mean, they were definitely not miming it.
Yeah.
And then we kick in, and I'm like, my son can't believe it's me because his buddies are like, my friends say you weren't with the Backstreet Boys. I was like, well, early on I was. He's like, no, Daddy. And I'm like, well, there's me. He's like, that guy's got long hair. I'm like, well, that's me. I said I had hair down the middle of my back. I'm like,
wow, dude.
So yeah, it was long before it went gray.
Insane.
So yeah, that's my Backstreet connection. And then, I mean, things like Kevin, the oldest one, Kevin would come over and hang at the house. Like because they were all getting tutored and he was already out of school. So he'd come hang with me and my buddies and we were like corrupting him.
Just like you were part of starting, one of the largest pop culture boy bands of all time. You're part of building it.
No big deal.
No big deal. Don't worry about it. We'll bring it up again. That's huge, man.
Well, I'm grateful. They were so sweet to me.
Yeah.
Cool connection with them and Sister Hazel. Fast forward a few years because that would have been 90. I was with them 94 to 96. And then they went to Europe and I went to California. It's the reason I turned down being in Sister Hazel is Ken had asked me. I was in another band called What It Is. It was a funk band. And we were real popular in the Southeast. And I just was honestly digging that. And I love Ken and Andrew and dig them. But I was like, man, I got a guy for you. And so I recommended Mark Trojanowski for this gig with Sister Hazel. fast forward a couple of years to 98 when Sister Hazel had their deal. They had a big #1 hit. They were playing Great Woods Amphitheater outside Boston. It's like Matchbox 20, Shania Twain. I mean, it's a who's who for a DirecTV event. They're like, hey, Tom, we want to fly you up to play percussion. Because I play on a lot of their records. I'm on percussion. And so I was like, yeah, that'd be awesome. You know, I think this would be cool. Well, we get up there and we're backstage, Great Woods. I mean, it's like a who's who. It's all these people. Matchbox is huge. They were the headliner.
Right.
Well, the boys were on it. Backstreet was coming in to do a thing, just a cappella. They didn't even have their band and they come on the loading dock there. And I'm just hanging out in the background, kidding. And you got to understand, back then, the boys, these guys, Sister Hazel were kind of rock stars. And I'm just their hired sideman friend. And then Kevin spots me across the loading dock. He's like, Tommy, all the boys called me Tommy in Backstreet, and they come over, and so all the Hazel guys are like, wait a minute, damn, that's right, Tom knows these dudes, and so then they're friends and stuff. So that was my one little moment of like,
dude,
see,
rock star.
I did have my time.
Yes,
and there's one roadie like, who the hell is Tommy?
Who's this dude?
Who the hell is Tommy?
And funny enough, Kurt, who is still the production manager now, was there then. He's been with Sister Hazel their whole career.
Wow.
But yeah, that's getting you to Backstreet. I mean, trust me, I get it all the time in Nashville. People are like, wait a minute, I see Backstreet Boys on your resume. I'm like, I mean, I'm their first drummer, dude.
That's crazy. Just happenstance, luck sometimes.
So you go from the range of people like Sister Hazel, Backstreet Boys, Tracy Lawrence is so big. Is there something that you've learned, I guess, via those different genres that like keeps you? I don't know what I'm trying to ask.
Grounded?
Like you're talking about in terms of like the flexibility of going from one to the other.
Yeah, how does that change your approach to drumming?
Oh my gosh, it's like I feel like it informs you so much. I'm thankful for each one. I mean, I always tell people, this last gig, Tracy Lawrence, I mean, I've been with TL in 2 different stints over 8 years, up until 2 years ago. I didn't know, even though I'd been working in Nashville for years, and yes, I'd been on lots of shows opening for artists like Tracy with other national artists. Whoever I worked for, I knew their music, but I'd been really intellectually lazy about like really paying attention to real country, like a lot of it. And well, Tracy's like card carrying, like serious country music star. He's got like 18 #1s, 15 million records sold. So when they called me to hire me in 2013, the band leader called me. I was coming out teaching a lesson at a kid's house in Belmead. And I'm like, he's like, hey, this is Joe Caverly with Tracy Lawrence. I'm like, sure it is.
I love the
That was
duality
like
of
me
that.
at the station today, where I was like, "Oh no, I'm here to meet with Tom Hurst with Sister Hazel," and they're like, "Yeah,
Sure, pal.
sure, turn
Take a
around."
hike.
They're like,
Turn around.
Tom who? We don't care.
Dude.
But, well, in all seriousness, I mean, that's the thing. Like Tracy, for instance, I feel like I went to the University of Country Music with him. I mean, the dude has forgotten more about that stuff. He does his own radio show. Now they do a podcast, real successful. And TL was so good to me, and like I was so clueless walking into his gig, even for all the experience I have as a player. Coming back to your question, it's like each thing is a whole new chance to reinvent yourself. I mean, I always say I'm jack of all trade, master of none, man. I've like and even just within genres, like you and Mitchell were saying about me being comfortable behind the kit.
Oh yeah.
Rest assured, I'm not necessarily feeling comfortable. I fake it till I make it.
It looks like it's so smooth. I have to let me just give you some praise here for a minute. So we're watching his set tonight. And he's playing traditional grip and moving around the drum set, and it just looks like butter. You know what I mean? And then you'll see he'll switch to match grip for a little bit, and then change back to traditional, and then do some left hand lead, and then some right hand lead. And then something will be wrong with the mix, or like he'll want to adjust something, so stick goes in the mouth while he's still playing the chart, and then he's like fiddling with the iPad, and then takes the stick back. I mean, it's just like. Looks like you're at home.
Well, you know what's nice is being here. It's so appropriate sitting outside the Contemporary here at Disney is that I've got to give all the love and the credit to the dudes I followed around like pups. Eddie Metz, Keith Wilson, rest his soul. I don't know if y'all would have known these names. Eddie, PJ Metz, his son was in FDL, Florida's Drumline, and, many years ago. And I actually taught PJ. Eddie called me up. And I mean, you got to understand, Eddie Metz is one of the best drum set players I've ever known anywhere. And he still lives here in Orlando, Habits. And those guys, everything you see me doing like that was watching them play shows. Kids of the Kingdom show, World Dancers. I mean, dude, they're playing to a click track. They're reading down the chart. I used to come in and try and sub. They were nice enough to let's let Jethro learn the show. Because they knew I played drum set. But, I mean, I couldn't carry these guys' jock straps. And I was just kind of hanging around like, hey, man, that's really cool what you do. But yes, to that end, man, that's the thing, Mikey. They made it look so easy. And that was my one goal. I'm like, man, If I'm going to do anything else, I'm a mediocre at best marching snare drummer. I'm definitely not much of a percussionist. The only thing I've ever been able to do is kind of smack backbeats, and I try and give it some good feel. And the thing about it, I tried to add to that, watching the way how elegant these guys played. That's the one thing I wish was still live here. Like when I started at Disney in '85, there were live shows with live bands, for the dancers all over property, and they were killer. They were all people that played in Vegas, or their resumes were stupid. It's like I was saying, I was with the Stan Kenton. I mean, Eddie Metz played with Count Basie before Count Basie passed away. There aren't many guys that have had that chair. I mean, Sonny Payne, I can name the famous drummers, and Ed did that job. So that's the level of player. So if anything, I feel like I went to the school of Disney when it comes to drum set.
I mean, this has kind of been a common theme that we've brought on people, but like Orlando is a good place to cut your teeth to develop your craft.
Absolutely.
And a good artist will look at, people that they idolize, that they want to be, even here in town, and you'll steal a bag of tricks and you'll be like, oh, I'm taking that.
Well, the talent in this town, you guys, man, like I said, when we're talking about TCI, good Lord, there's so many talented people. You're not thinking about John Torado or, go through, of course, like Mike Marino and guys, but I was trying to think the other Mike that's so killing. He's another guy that worked with, it's just, it's ridiculous. Like Shalaba. I mean, I remember coming down from Gainesville, and, growing up in Gainesville, it's a pretty talented little town. Obviously, people talk about Tom Petty and all that.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of music. But man, Orlando, I tell, like, this is funny. I was telling the story today. In Nashville, I host these shows, these Loud Jam shows. And so my friend Carrie she's our musical director, and she's amazing. But she'll hire our horn section, and I love the horn section. But they kind of got attitudes. They got those horn player attitudes.
Come on.
And I'm like,
brass.
You can imagine what I'm like, buddy, I worked with Scott Whitfield, Joe Barati, John Allred out at Disney. I'm like, on your best day, you are not in that league. I'm like, you need to get over yourself because I'm not impressed. And I mean, this is the time where he knows my wonderful ego comes out. I'm like, I'm not putting up with the big timer thing, because I worked with horn players like mop the floor with you, dude. And that was here, Disney. I mean, I've never, to this day, some of the best musicians. I mean, gosh, I felt bad for them. I wanted to apologize. I'm so sorry you get the same paycheck I do.
Dude, it's insane. It's crazy because just like how you can go to a larger market like New York City, and you'll find a drum set player sitting in on a Wednesday night on a jazz open mic night, and you'll be like, this guy could change my life. You could find something very similar here in Orlando. Just a guy who's hidden, and you're like, what are you doing in this town?
Oh, my
Which I
gosh.
love when that happens, when I'm like,
Ryan
what are you
Smith.
doing? Ryan Smith, Shaq Nasty.
Yeah, Ryan's one of the baddest dudes I know anywhere.
God.
I don't care, that's, you can, like,
But that's part of the thing in Nashville, right? You set up the Loud Jams.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? Like,
oh yeah, sure. No, I mean, it's Loud Jams is basically, in a nutshell, I started it in 2011. We actually just did a show in March. It was the first one in about 3 years, and that really started as just a lark. I just wanted to. What I was trying to do is get friends together to play like kind of crazy fusion stuff.
Yeah,
all the kind of jazz world music I liked, just as a break from the road thing we did. So I just started calling all my buddies that tour with different country artists. Most of us were, in those days it was mostly country. And so I was like, let's do the stuff that get us fired, basically. And that's what it was. I mean, it's like, so we get together on a Monday night and play like Pat Metheny tunes and, Yellow Jackets, Rich Viano. Like,
he got me on a Yellow Jackets years ago, man. Yeah. Blue Hats, that album.
Incognito, like all the stuff Richie loves. I always said, Richie, I was like, man, I wish you could come up here and we'll talk more about that. Viano, and I march right next to Viano in Suncoast. He's like, he and his son still do my website. So, he's one of my brothers. But yeah, that was Loud Jams was really an outgrowth of kind of just me. I got approached by a club owner that knew me. I had booked a show there with my own band, the Power Triplets. That's my friend Chris Nix. It's really his band. Chris does all the writing, but he's like one of my best friends. This is our little power trio. And so the owner said, hey man, you seem to have a lot of connections with people. You want to host this? We used to have a jam night. We need something new. And I said, it was on Sundays. I said, well, I'll do it on Mondays. And that kind of kicked off Loud Jams. And so basically now the simple way to synopsis, I think what we've done, almost 50 shows since 2011. After COVID, I honestly was kind of burned out. I did one show and then we didn't do anything. But this friend of mine, Carrie Glenn, has kind of got me fired back up because she's such a monster musician. She's great at all the stuff I'm not, like horn arranging and like keyboard player, So I'm like, hey, if you'll do all that, I can corral the people. So I think we've had over 1,000 musicians perform on it in Nashville. And you understand, man, when I say, there's no way to say it otherwise. I mean, it's the dudes and the dudettes and all the in-betweens, everybody that like the players. artists. Like we've, Rascal Flatts bass player, or, this person plays for Peter Frampton. I mean, it's incredible.
Can I ask you a question about that event? Is that, because another topic that comes up on here is networking for artists, which is, it's a weird thing to have to network your art or your craft, because really that's what you want. You just want to do it. You want to be able to just craft it, do it, perform it, play it, whatever it is, paint it. But it's another thing to kind of network in, because that word, the taboo, is this a kind of a good way, not to call it a networking event, but it's an event where you can go and you can really pick it up.
You're spot on. I talk to my students a lot. At the class I teach at North Alabama was actually created by my buddy Rich Redmond. If you not name dropping, but Rich is Jason Aldean's drummer, and he's another North Texas guy. He and Mark went to school together, in similar times. The drummer from Hazel. So I've known Rich since the '90s, but the class that we teach at North Alabama, it's called Drumming in the Modern World, and there's a career component. And what I always tell the guys is I don't, not that networking's a bad word. It's just try and develop authentic relationships. Just what I was talking to you about, the guys like he and Mitchell and their whole creative team. That friendship, that bond. I mean, there's so much authenticity. And like you say, it's hard to do that when you're trying to just get out there and get known. Yeah. So your question about it is spot on. It was kind of just a happy byproduct of Loud Jams. I didn't do it intentionally, but what I've had people tell me through the years is oh, Tom, I met so-and-so on this gig. Because what the criteria, we started out with just the jam thing. What it eventually became is I would just curate a 20 song set list, just all kind of stuff. It's just totally selfish. I'd have big
someone's got to be there,
I'm like, well, and the funny thing is we've never made a penny. It's been a free show. It's free to attend. We never charged a dime, because I wanted people to be able to get together, hang, have a friendly way to build relationships and network, but build those authentic friendships. And y'all know when you get on stage together. So what the deal was is we'd be like, hey, we'll assign you to a song. Just learn it the way it is on the album. We're not sweating that, but that's just your reference point. No weird arrangements. Just play what's there, and no rehearsal. Meet the people on stage, and that's how we do it. You walk up, and I mean, we do.
I just got nervous.
I mean, we do this with Yes, Changes, Jellyfish, Big Wreck. I mean, I know he and Lindsay are always turning me on to cool bands, but.
Lindsay is not.
But well,
hey.
Not Mike.
I sent him bands.
I did, and by the way, that drummer. What's the band you guys love that turned me on to years ago? Their drummer reached out to me once he moved to Nashville.
I don't. What
something as Animals as leader. That guy, I think, is who got in touch with me, because we have a mutual friend, and I said, man, I've got friends in Florida who love your band, and I told them about. I said I didn't know a thing about it until they turned me on to you.
Pliny is another one too.
Oh, okay.
If you haven't checked that out, see him dropping music right now.
There it is.
Look at that. He does, man. He texts me things just like, Tom, you need to check this one out.
Tom's
I'm like,
it's
hey,
2 a.m.
Mikey, if you're that's okay. 2 a.m. Bring it on, man.
It's music hits you in a certain way. You just have. There's just moments where I'm man, this is too good. And people need to hear this.
And I'm so guilty of being the typical old musician who gets just burned out. And it's as soon as I go listen, but it's like dragging me to the well to get me to do it. And as soon as I listen, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great. It's like, I can think of, Corey Wong, I was like, oh, I've heard all this funk stuff. Then I saw them live a year or so ago. Now Pitar, that drummer's one of my favorite drummers alive. I love that dude, and got to meet him because he's a Pearl guy with all of us, and he's such a nice guy on top of it.
He did something. Corey Wong did something with what's the Swedish band?
I just went to see him in Nashville. Dirty Loops.
Dirty Loops.
Woo. Those boys are frightening.
Yeah,
they are ridiculous.
The Royal Academy of Music.
Man, it's nuts. And they're live. You just cannot. I can't. I'm going to see Jacob Collier in a few weeks, which is another one.
We were just talking about him last week.
That guy, he's been wearing me out for 5-6 years. I'm just like,
stresses me. That is insane.
Genius beyond genius. Well, you hear when Quincy Jones and Herbie Hancock are both going I think, what was it? Herbie said it. He says, I think he's one of the most important musicians of our time. That's coming from Herbie Hancock.
That's insane. To have that guy say that line.
But then you see Jacob, and he's so self-effacing and down to earth, and he's just, but he starts talking about jazz theory or anything, and you're like, you lost me at the first 2 minutes. I don't even understand what you're talking about.
It's insane. The way he works too. I mean, and this is another thing we talked about is doing deep work when you're trying to either I maybe I attribute this when I used to play drums.
Yeah.
Was practicing was you really have to lock yourself away, throw away the key, and focus. No phone.
Sorry, guys.
Maybe even sure, have Wi-Fi if you need it, but it's just an intention and a focus and imagination and just drilling it and patience and discipline and focusing on something. And I think Jacob Collier just does that better than anybody else.
He's like creativity personified.
God.
I remember years ago, I had a friend, I can't remember who turned me on to it. It's a book called The Artist's Way. And
Rich Riano turned you on to that.
I've read.
It had to have been Rich.
Yeah, I've read that. Yeah.
So you do and then what is it for 90 days?
Journaling.
Every morning you do the journaling. I did it and like pushed myself through. I might have had a couple days I had to come back and do it later in the day, but I really tried. And like you were talking about the cutting off, like it's amazing how much self-talk. And again, I don't do any creative design like Mike and the guys do. I barely ever written a song. Like I've been part of it. I've been in the room, but I would take no credit. But I am absolutely aware of that thing where there's that constant sense of like, oh, that's not good. Or that's not, it's like, man, dispel that nonsense. Just throw it against the wall. See what you got, cluster, throw ideas but do the work. Don't worry about criticizing yourself.
Do you ever meet those thoughts in the studio or ever?
Gosh, yeah. Are you kidding? I'm always I'm going, well, Near Z would do this, my heroes, or
your heroes
down, when I would play the shows out here. Well, Eddie plays this, I'm really guilty of it. But the one thing, like Mike says, I have just enough of that. I guess now they all call it Jethro. I've got a little bit of that effort, kind of side to me that just doesn't care. Like I care a lot. Like you see, I transcribe everything I play. Like I write out exactly what's on the song. That's what's on my iPad. The guys, my buddies, tease me. They're like, "Oh my Lord, how do you even read that?" But it's just.
Was that tonight too?
That's
just reference there as a reference.
It's more of a reference with Hazel because I know their stuff pretty well. But yeah, I'll literally like Mark. For instance, we played 2 tunes today that I've never played with them till today. Mark does the same thing. He's excellent. He went to North Texas. He's excellent transcript. And he's got way better handwriting than me. And so I kind of got him into that.
Sure.
And we both use Fourscore on our iPad. So he just sent that to me. I literally read it at soundcheck, and it was, I play that better than I play some of the tunes I've been playing with him for years because it's like, oh, well, there it is.
Yeah.
So, but back to your question with that, like that connecting. It's a weird thing because I try and turn off that real, what is it, the analytical side of me.
That voice, whatever that is.
It is, and that overthinks it. I've gotten worse about that. I was actually better in my 20s because I just didn't know any better. Ignorance is bliss. I just went for it.
You just went for it, took a risk.
Yeah. Well, if you talk to, like you mentioned, Sean Crilly, or any of those Florida drumline guys, even like Chip Berkner, my bud, that's the band director up at UF, those guys were all in FDL in the 90s when I was doing this band, What It Is. And that's why I never joined Sister Hazel. What It Is had this cult following. Like, it's hard to, we were like a Corey Wong, we were a funk band, horn section, DJ. People flipped out on us. No social media. We could show up in a place in like South Carolina, our first show, and there'd be 500 people there, all on word of mouth. And it had nothing to do with me. It was our front man. Well, the guitar player, Avi Bordnick, still plays with John Schofield, the famous jazz guitarist. I mean, these guys I was the weak link in this band out of all the dudes.
Which is saying something there.
Well, that's what I mean. I'm like, I knew I could handle my business, but these guys were all way better than me. Yeah. And it's like, that's the thing. Like back in those days, I just went for it. So we would play Sapphire Supper Club downtown. It looked like a UCF drumline convention. You'd have every guy, Dale Black, all these guys back then, Matt Brown, all those dudes were just out of college. What's the Shinedown drummer? Brett Kirsch, Barry. Barry was in UCF's drumline. So they'd all come hang. And so my guys in my band are like, oh, great, we're coming to Orlando. It's going to be the Tom show. Because I'd have all these drummers, Anthony Cole, all my Disney buddies. It was every drummer you ever could think of. And they're like, either like, Tom is going to overplay even worse tonight. And I would. Yeah. So that's where all the left-hand lead stuff comes from.
Yeah.
I get my rad cymbal up here. So, but back to the long circuitous, back to the thing of the creative work piece, is I've just been fortunate, whether it's these guys, the What It Is guys, man, my friends Jack and Britton, why I went to Nashville. Jack plays in Jason Aldean's band to this day. I mean, I've just been around some really creative cats who reminded me that it's not all about going to school. It's not all about, it's like, just make the music, serve the song. At the end of the day, serve, what is that, the KISS, keep it simple, stupid, serve the song. Now I still overplay constantly, just like I overtalk.
So when you started ending up in the studio and becoming more of a studio musician, was that later on in your career? Or was that something that was always along the way?
That's a good question. And to that end, let me not misrepresent myself. I would never say, because I know the guys who are the studio musicians, I'm not one of those dudes.
Really?
Like, no, I'm not in that league.
What does that mean?
Yeah, let me expand on it, because I will say I'm funny like that. In 1985, around the time I would have started Disney, or 86, I did my first a Gainesville Sun commercial. It was for the news back when they'd actually hire musicians.
Yeah.
And we were like cutting to 2-inch tape. And I mean, I had to read a chart and everything. And so, yeah, so I've done sessions. I've probably been on 100 albums and projects at least in my life. But I'm definitely not, I'm not that driven to that. I love it. I love to record. And I've done my fair share. I mean, Tracy had me play on a few of his albums. I've been on master things. I've been on with Sister Hazel through the years. But I've always sort of just dabbled in, I've always been, like you were talking to me about Logic, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been rather lazy about that because I was spoiled. I was always around guys who were so good and real deep in it, probably like you are. You know, like they're really into the tech side. And again, the Jethro part of me is a legit thing. I'm just like, I'd rather go like ramp my bike. We'll talk about that. Or, wakeboard.
Yes.
Because that's the other side of me. I'm not one of these ate up with music guys. Like I love going and building mountain bike trails, and I raced BMX, and I was like, drumming was just always kind of like, well, I can do that because my dad was a drummer. My dad played as a hobby, and he grew up in Muscle Shoals. And so I've got a lot of that kind of background to me. But back to the point about the session thing, what I have found I'm fairly good at is that I'm sensitive to songs. People seem to like the way I usually get I'm the guy for like the weird tunes and stuff. Oh, get Tom, because he's good at like all that world music stuff.
What song was it tonight? You started doing a reggae one drop.
In all for you.
The
breakdown.
The number one single.
Yeah.
This man starts doing a reggae one drop on like the bridge.
Okay. Well,
it's the best ever.
Dude, understand, like if I had my druthers, I've always wanted to be Sly Barrett, or Robbie, Sly and Robbie, or Carlton Barrett, like Bob Marley's drummer. Stuart Copeland's my all-time favorite drummer because I love that kind of reggae worldish thing. And then like now, it's to this day, if what I practice at home, and I actually do practice a lot more than I did ever before. I want to be Horacio Hernandez or all these killer Cuban drummers. That's I practice left foot clave stuff all the time. Nobody's going to ever hire me for that. They don't need my
Tom walks in.
Yeah,
that's the country music thing that'll get you.
They're like, hold on. Was it háblame, or how I'm trying to say that? I'm trying to say, speak to me more slowly. In Spanish. Háblame más despacio, more.
And they're like, get out.
Yeah. They're like, hey, gringo boy, beat it.
Yeah.
The left foot clave is how you lose your country gig.
Yes.
That's exactly how you lose it.
And I used to joke with TL about it because he'd hear me doing it at sound check in the daytime. He'd sometimes be like, Tom, what the hell are you doing? It's like,
clave pattern,
sir. He's like, whatever. Just play Time Marches On, right?
Oh, that's so funny.
So I mean, funny enough that like that's kind of where. So when we're talking about the world stuff coming up, and you know why? I mean, being out here, I played with Jaime and Orlando Sanchez. Orlando Sanchez was the percussionist for Backstreet Boys with us.
No.
Yeah, he was the original percussionist too. He played because we had Jenny Ashbaugh. Y'all probably know who Billy Ashbaugh, the drummer for NSYNC.
Yep.
Okay, so Billy,
I know.
If Billy hadn't been in Europe with Turbo B, it's getting kind of hectic. That like one hit wonder, I would never have got the Backstreet gig. Because Billy mopped the floor with me playing all that pop stuff. He had already was in with that, but he was in Europe touring, and his wife Jenny was one of the drum set auditionees. I love Jenny. She's not much of a drum set player, but she's a damn good percussionist. And I mean, I'd say not much next to like some of the guys, Randy Nichols. There were some killer drummers there that day, and nor was I. But so Jenny was our first percussionist. I don't know why she didn't keep doing it. She was like doing like pads. This is in the early days, this is '94. But yeah, when she quit doing it, Orlando came on and he did several shows with us as our percussionist.
He and Jaime did Beatniks too?
Yeah. So the guys I'm talking about is Orlando Sanchez and Jaime Ballesteros from it's Rich Viano's 5-day band at Village Beatniks. And I love that you guys call it Boatniks.
Boatniks, that's what we do now.
So I came back in that time period about 2004. I was back finishing up undergrad at UF. I'd like finally quit chasing the whole record label thing, and my band had lost our deal, blah blah blah. So I was back at UF just finishing my degree. It's like grandpa goes to college, and so I think I was like 30, and I would sub out here with it because Viano was like, Jether, why don't you come sub in the band? And again, you out here, and these guys are world class Latin percussionists.
Amazing.
And so all I do is I just channel like my real poor man's North Florida, country boy version of their stuff. Yeah. So I mean, but I definitely love it.
This was a note from Mike Marino talking about playing with Jaime, where he's like, okay, if Jaime goes out to take a solo, you just cover your ears.
Yeah.
And you just play in time and don't listen.
Yeah.
Because the moment you try to listen and try to snag on to whatever he's doing, you lose
You'll
it.
get lost.
Yeah.
What they call it, getting lost in the sauce. It's an Anthony Bourdain quote. Yeah, you'll get lost.
I had a student say that to me earlier this semester. He said, Professor Hurst, you send us all these YouTube videos and you've got all these transcriptions. I'm kind of lost in the sauce. And I'm like, dude, I am guilty of that. I will overwhelm you because I'm like, my worry is I don't want them to be bored. I want my students to like give them as much as I can. And they're like, man, I was good with the one transcription for the week.
Yeah. Tom, can I ask an under the hood question or a sausage making question, if you will? Is you talked about you still practice.
Yeah.
You've been practicing probably your entire life.
Yeah.
How do you practice now?
It's a good question. I mean, I honestly didn't practice as much when I was younger. I probably was gigging so much that I kind of, I thought
trial by fire.
Yeah. Well, you know what it is you begin to realize that you're like, okay, as I've gotten older and I've had the chance to be in a lot of different settings, you're able to hone in on things and go, oh, wow, okay, like coordination skills. Because like when I teach, I have a pretty clear like teaching hierarchy. I start songs and styles, rhythm and rates, coordination foundation, orchestration and rotation, timbre and timbre. I've got like a 5-step thing like with students. And what I'm basically doing is kind of a typical music education or any education, whole part whole, saying, hey, what is it you want to learn? You love, I don't know, let's take you like Roxanne by the Police. Well, deconstruct that song. Start with the song. Have something that you're inspired by. This because I've sat with so many hundreds of kids in private lessons. I feel sorry for them. They're looking at you like, my parents made me come. And I'm trying to think. So my thing to them is like, what music do you listen to? And a lot of times with kids, you're like, nothing. So these days now I have to be like, what TikTok video do you listen to or watch or anything, whatever gets them. But it's to find that thing that becomes songs and styles. That becomes a piece. That's thing. So back to the question of what do I practice? I try and apply that to myself and go, okay, for me, like I'm a total poser as a jazz drummer. I know friends who are serious, legit jazz drummers. Now my buddies are like, oh, Tom can play jazz. No. I still play at jazz. I love it. And see, when I was out here, I hated it. Like when I came to work, because all these guys were like Joe Jazz, all the Disney cats and horn. I swore I'd never use that term. Now I'm the worst. I'm like, cat this and cat that.
This cat right here.
Yeah, this cat, man. And I hated it all when I worked out here. I was like, man, I like Rush.
Yeah.
I like the Police, the Fix, Duran. Because it's 1980s. And all the horn players like, Jethro, you don't know squat. Man, we playing Mr. Yeah. And I'm like, because I'm going to get paid to play backbeats.
That's right.
I ain't getting paid. Trombone and your master's degree or doctorate on tuba.
And he's kind of right, though.
Well, it's so true. Like the joke out here, the definition of an optimist back in the day when it was pagers is a trombone player with a pager. It's like, he's going to get a gig.
Yeah,
and funny enough, I played in a full-time band full of 8 trombone players who'd almost all of them gone to North Texas. I mean, they were all. But yeah, so on the practicing front, I find myself working, funny enough, and you'll appreciate this, I probably play a lot more keyboard percussion. I play a lot of marimba, like badly. I mean, like some of our best students, like at Lee University, we've got some monstrous marimba players because my boss there, Andy Harnsbarger, is a world class, legit, concert marimbist. Yeah. And I'm just the drum set guy. So we've got some kids there. But the funny thing is they can't read their way out of a wet paper bag. I can go up like with a Beth Gottlieb book and I can better read on xylophone than they can. And and he loves to roll that out on them at juries, like when they play this amazing, terribly hard marimba piece, and we put up like something in D minor. Okay, read this little thing here, this little excerpt, and they're like tick 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 tick, and I'm like, this kid falls apart because they haven't. All they've done is memorize these hard marimba things.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So back on point of like practicing, I try and be as holistic as possible. I still do a lot of hand drumming, but like I said, my main focus almost every day to really get in kind of the sausage making, I go down to my studio, where we are in Kingston Springs. I'm blessed to have a cool space, I've got my marimba right behind me. I've got a drum set, I've got congas. I'm so ADD. You can see how I am. I'll be a squirrel. Yeah. So I try and just put myself in the space. I walk my trails first, and then I come back in, but my girlfriend heads off to work. She's a PTA. And, before I have to go teach or whatever, I go down there for an hour, and what I do is I'll put on music I love. I've got a whole playlist. I call it my clave practice playlist. It might be Toto or it might be Tito Puente. And I'm like, which clave is this? 2-3 son, 3-2 rumba. And that's what I do. And I will take like the New Breed drum book, and I'll work on playing cascada with my right hand and reading the bass drum parts.
Really?
Reading New Breed reading pages with my bass drum while I play clave with my left foot and fill in with my left hand. Or I might do it as like an overlay hand-to-hand thing, like drumline. Yeah.
And do you go for, and you said you go for about an hour? Do you think any less than that is like?
Oh, no. Don't let me give you too many. You mark an hour.
Yeah.
What I do, and this is how I've taught my students to practice. I get it, man. It's like the Alan Iverson. We talk about practice.
Yeah.
I was like, that's the thing is like, I agree with Alan. It's like, let's talk about performing. Let's talk about thinking. So what I tell students, hey, put it in context of a 4-minute song. Practice whatever it is you're using. Use that song as your music as a metronome. Play to that for 4 to 5 minutes. And then change gears, do something else, but do like 3 or 4 segments. So what I'll usually do, there's an hour in there, but I might play drum set for 20 minutes. I play marimba for 20 minutes. It's why I probably don't progress on any one of them.
Right.
And don't let me fool you. I mean, it's not like I'm down there every single day.
No.
During the semester, I've gotten to know the groove of college teaching. The front half is always pretty intense, so I don't get as much time because our students have a lot more going. As the semester goes on, we've all been in college settings.
Yeah.
You're like, they start showing up less. Oh, prof, I overslept. Oh, I got this, And so I have more time to myself. I'm like, cool. So I actually go over to the nice thing being at Tennessee State because, Lee's down in Chattanooga, so I commute to that. North Alabama, I only teach at UNA 3 times a semester. It's a master class. But I'm at Tennessee State twice a week on Mondays and Wednesdays, and then I do Nashville State. I teach this. And basically, I'm a music history teacher. Yeah. So, but point of all of that is that by having Tennessee State, we've got 5-octave marimbas, vibraphones. So I go in there a lot and just shed, read stuff.
Sure.
So, okay.
Yeah.
With all, that's so much.
Yeah.
What does a week look like for you? What is a typical week?
That's a good question because it depends on the time of the year. Most of the time when school's in session, let's just take it. I do Mondays and Wednesdays, like I said, at Tennessee State. Tuesdays, I drive down to Lee University in Chattanooga. It's about 185 miles. So I've been doing that for 5 years. So, but it's only like 12 times in the fall, 12 times in the spring. So, and now I do sometimes via Zoom. Like they've allowed me.
Zoom came out and I was like, thank God.
Oh yeah, dude, I'm telling you. But the typical week, like I say, North Alabama's the outlier because I go down there one Thursday a month for 3 times through a semester and teach a 2.5-hour class. And I also do a jazz series down there. If this guy has me, they book it around me being in town, and I'll play with them after I teach my class. But the typical week is teaching I teach 6-7 students at Tennessee State, probably had 9 students at Lee. Nashville State has me teach this intro to music course, and they're little 7-week segments. Basically, you hear me, my motor mouth. I'm the lecturer for basically music history, which is so funny to me because when I went through undergrad, I couldn't have told you who Palestrina or the Ars Nova or anything about music history. And then when I went back to grad school, I studied that stuff so much just so I would have my act together. I ended up clipping out of having to take it. And because I did undergrad and grad school at University of Florida.
Sure.
Well, my professor who taught me in undergrad, she administered the music history graduate exam to get in. And she's like, I recognize this horrible handwriting. Is that Tom Hurst? And because they don't have our names on it. And she goes, and she told our graduate advisor, I was out on a tour bus. I was with Tracy in Texas. I get a call on my cell phone on like a Saturday afternoon. And Dr. Odom goes, you sitting down? I'm like, yeah, I'm just hanging out here on the bus. How you doing, Dr. Odom? I'm thinking I'm not getting into grad school. She's like, guess who clept out of music history? Said the only incoming grad. I said, me? And you know how it is, man. There's all these people who are really smart.
Yeah.
And there's Jethro.
Remember, he referred himself as Jethro. That's the not smart part of him.
That's why I find it funny that the Infinity kids think Jethro's this bad guy. Jethro's the goofy kid, That's and the funny thing was, man, I was like, what? She's like, yeah, Tom, you're not gonna have to take you don't have to take history review. That's 3 credit hours off your schedule. So if you want to take something in the summer, you probably can do your master's in 3 semesters instead of 4. And I'm, as a dad, I was coming back to school. This was only back in 2014.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, Dr. Odom. Yeah. My son was little. I was like, man, I'll do whatever. And so I was able to actually, the group I came in with, they all graduated a semester after me, and I got done just because of that one class. And what I did, I sat it's a different layout. That table would have been over here. I was on the back of Tracy's bus. I remember that spring of 2014, once I knew I was going to go in the fall, studying every morning.
No
I was
way.
studying music
You're on
theory.
tour and you're studying?
Oh, dude, that's why they called me. In Tracy's band, all our cases and stuff said Dr. Tom.
Dr. Tom.
And I was like, guys, I'm just getting a master's. I'm just doing a thesis.
I'm just doing a thesis. Can you imagine the entire band's out there, maybe, having some fun, and then he's just in here trying to figure out where world music started.
Exactly. I'm like, okay, so let me see. The Renaissance ends, and,
They're like, shut up, Tom.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's awesome. Our band leader's in Nashville would be called fiddle, but he's a legit violinist,
Yeah.
And he was like, damn, look at you talking about Palestrina, and I was like, I know
Took him
I know
back.
about your instrument, brother. I'll talk about some pergola.
Yeah. That's so cool.
So I mean, Mikey, that's but back on the kind of typical week, I do the university stuff on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, a little bit on Thursday if I go down there. Wednesday nights I play Kid Rock's Rooftop, like in the evening. I've got 5 shifts. I do that on Wednesday nights. I play Friday afternoon. I play a shift at Rippy's Friday night at Redneck Riviera John's place, Saturday morning at Kid Rock's, and Saturday afternoon at Tin Roof. And then I go do a jazz trio thing on Saturday night. And the funny thing is, I used to not do as much because I was like, to my girlfriend and my son, I'm like, well, I don't want to be away too much. They're like, we don't care.
No, Dad, go.
No, that's what it is. Summer's so great. That's my girl. And Bryant, my son's like, Daddy, I'm going to be on my video games with my buddies.
Yeah.
It's okay.
This was something I wanted to ask was like, what is it like to be on the road or touring or be a touring musician, even if it's intermittently or on a full tour schedule? And a father,
dude. And what I'd have to say is, to start with, you got to give all the credit in the world to all these guys I've worked for. I mean, Hazel, Bryant's been out here on this bus. He's come out with me. Matter of fact, last time I did this, we played a few years ago when the fall show is at Flower and Garden, and we did that one because Hazel got called at the last minute to cover for, I think it was Smash Mouth or one of those bands, and Mark couldn't do it. And
All Star.
Yeah. And so that's exactly, I think it was those guys. And so they had me come down, and I said, well, man, I got Bryant this weekend. I'm off from Tracy. This is one of and Tim Bogle, the manager, was like, well, man, bring him. So Bryant hopped on the bus with me. I talked to Bryant's mom. I said, this is when he was like elementary school. I said, hey, well, I'm going to have him skip school Friday. She's like, to go to Disney World for the weekend with Daddy? Yeah. So he came down. I mean, that's just one with them. Oh my gosh, Tracy would let me bring him all the time. We had 2 buses. Our band guys are all dads and stuff. They're super cool. Bryant's like, I don't know how G-rated the podcast. You might have to edit it out. I mean, the poor kid, our back lounge, a lot of our guys would be back there burning one.
Yeah.
The kids, he's sleeping in the bunk. I mean, he's been exposed to everything. I think he and I figured out he's been to 36 states with me.
Wow.
And this was, his mom and I were together till we got divorced when he was in 5, but we're good friends. Heather's a great mom. She's kicks butt. And her dad was CEO of BMI Music Publishing. So that was my father-in-law back in the day up there. She grew up in Nashville. She's like, it goes further.
They get it.
It has nothing to do with my family. I mean, but her grandparents, my son's great-grandparents wrote Rocky Top.
Well,
they wrote Bye Bye Love, Wake Up Little Susie, All I Have to Do Is Dream, Love Hurts. I mean, they're Nashville's like first professional songwriters. This is my son's grandparents.
I didn't even know these people existed.
Yeah. Oh, I know. They're
it's insane.
Dude, it's insane. And again, I have nothing to do with it. I grew up in a trailer outside of Gainesville, So, but Bryant, it's a cool thing, man. So coming back as a dad, that's why I love seeing you guys, you and Mitchell and all of you guys with kids. I'm so thankful that I've been able to be there for him. I've still been able to make soccer games and stuff, because we're kind of weekend warriors out of Nashville. You don't have to be on tour.
Sure.
Run out, do Friday night, Saturday night, and you're back Sunday.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's still painful. I remember driving off sometimes on a Thursday afternoon to bus call or evening, and, he's sitting on the thing when he's little with his mom going, bye, Daddy. And I'm like, I'm like crying.
Sure.
You know what a softie I am.
Yeah.
Anyway, they all think they're like Jethro. He says, I'm like, man, I'll just cry to drop a hat. I'm total wuss. But that's the part, watching all these guys have their kids out here. Their kids have grown up and that's what Sister Hazel is unbelievable. Ken says it when he introduces me. He says, hey, family comes first. That's why our buddy Tom's filling in for Mark. But I mean, they walk their talk. All 5 of them have multiple subs. If it's not me, it's a guy. You were talking about the studio thing earlier.
Yeah.
Kind of funny aside to it. Ben Jackson, who subs for Mark if I can't do it, and really now Ben is their producer. I introduced Ben to Mark, said, hey man, I got this friend who's excellent. I can't do your gig. And so, then Ben comes out here and he and Ken really hit it off. And he's like you, he's into the studio thing, has a gorgeous studio, and he has turned into, they've done, several albums now have been done at Ben's place outside Nashville. And it's just kind of neat to see that stuff.
Just feels like you're on the back end of all these bands, getting band members in and drummers.
Well, you said earlier, it's not really networking. It's just, Richie talks about it, tipping point. He talks about Campese and I. He says both of us are I forget what he calls it. It's some kind of connector thing. There's one of
You're connectors, what they would say. Yeah.
I mean, that's Infinity. What do I have to do with it? These guys, if Infinity
you started it.
But if Infinity was run just by me, it would have fallen apart the first week. But what I'm good at, I will say this, is I'm good at recognizing talent and getting people together and get out of their way.
Gotcha.
I'm not a micromanager.
getting out of the way.
Bub, and I'll say this to him in his face, John Campese, wherever you are, John is a micromanager.
Yeah.
I am not.
Yeah.
Because John actually has a lot of talent in those areas. I don't. I'm like, I know. Like, I mean, I'm going up to Cliff Walker. Hey, man, I think it'd be cool to do an indoor drum line. Just like, yeah, that's great, Tom. Don't you play drum set mostly? You know?
It's like, yeah, but anyway.
And by the way, shout out to Cliff, man. That Cavies line last summer. Oh my gosh.
Spotless.
I didn't know that was Cliff. I didn't know. Like, I didn't know he was on staff. I was just loving him all summer. And they're like, that's Cliff Walker does the front. And I'm like, dude. So, I mean, it's again, man, there's like, so I have so much respect for Timber Creek. I know all the, like, in the early days, TCI and Infinity, but I was like, man, dude, all I know is there's some talented home guys and gals that came out of TCI.
It was good for Orlando.
It's exactly. Good. And look at now. But back on point, and when you say about starting stuff, that's kind of like Loud Jams. My buddy David Parks and I started a thing called Nashville Drummer Jam, and that was really David's baby. But that's what all my friends tell me. They're like, dude, they'll see Infinity up there. They're like, wait, you're involved with that too? Because they'll see the post with my name, and they're like, what do you not have your hands in? I'm like, man, I'm really good at sticking my nose in there, and then I haul ass.
It's such a good skill because you don't want to stick around too much if it's not your forte.
Yeah.
No pun intended. If it's not your strength, you don't want to get involved in something that you're, too deep into.
If you see, honestly, it's why I got all sensitive on you guys. Seeing what exists now with Infinity that is an outgrowth of TCI and all this, it's what it represents to me as a guy that Orlando is a second home to me. You said it earlier. I cut my teeth here. I owe everything to all these musicians and administrators and people put up with my dumb butt, racing in 5 minutes before set time.
Sure.
Sorry, man.
It's all part of it.
I had a gig till 3 a.m.
Don't care. Get out there.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, Jethro, just be dressed and be ready to hit out of the breezeway.
You're talking to Jethro at that point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So to see Infinity, I could care less about scores. I see this community. I see a friendship. I see him meet his wife. I see Mitchell and his wife. That's to me, and there's kids, and I'm like, man, it's like, and John teases me, this is where, like, it's where I love Bub's everything to me. I mean, I'm nowhere without John Campese. And we laugh about it because I'm the, like, kumbaya, let's get everybody together. And he's like, but then you're like this aggro, you got a hair trigger. I'm like, I know. Yeah. I'm like, I'm Sagittarius, man. I'm either I'm all passion or one way or the other.
Gosh.
So yeah.
Well, I want to jump back on the collaboration thing.
Yeah.
All right. So when you're going with these different artists, and you're subbing either on the road or in session work.
Yeah.
What is collaboration like in those settings? Like, what's the wiggle room on what you can add, take away, do?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because, like, for instance, the one I've been doing lately that just started last year, and I got to give a big shout out to my buddy Jim Riley. He's Rascal Flatts band leader, drummer. We're pals. He marched Freelancers. He's tenors and North Texas guy again. There's always, and Nashville's like all North Texas dudes. Funny enough, Jim was kind enough to recommend me last year to this band Generation Radio. You probably don't know that name, but you'll know the guys. It's Jay DeMarcus, the founder of Rascal Flatts. In Flats, he played bass, but he's really a piano player, a killer piano player. Ironically enough, he went to school at Lee University where I teach. Long before I taught there. Well, I didn't even know that. And I toured with him way, way back in the day. But, not to get too far afield from your question, that it's him, it's Jason Sheff, who's the lead singer of the band Chicago. And then there are two amazing guitar players. One guy that Chris Rodriguez plays with, like, everybody, Faith Hill, Kenny Loggins. So it's like a super group. But get this, who their drummers. First drummer was Dean Castronova, the drummer who's from Journey. So Dean was the original drummer. They started this thing out of COVID. All these guys, they were just bored. They just wanted to do something fun. They're all like, they've all super successful. Well, this has grown into it. They're booked by William Morris, and Dean went back to Journey. Neil Sean talked him into coming. So who they get? Steve Ferroni, the drummer from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Wow.
Okay, well, you can imagine. Now, Steve is a session drummer. He's a guy who is in demand on people's records and stuff and lives out in California, as does Jason, the bass player. So they just fly into the gigs. They do about, 20, 30 gigs a year. Well, Steve's very busy. And last year, I ended up, Jim couldn't do some dates to sub for Steve and told them, hey, man, my friend Tom's a really good study. So to your question about the wiggle room, come in knowing it like exactly the way he plays it. Like, I studied Steve's board tapes and I studied the records, of course, and man, I got to give another shout out to Drumeo. A lot of my buddies will roll their eyes like, all the videos. I'm like, I don't care about the videos. Have you seen the song collection?
Well, the transcriptions.
They've got like up to almost 6,000 transcriptions.
Whoa.
Dude, And I'm talking, I used one today. Let's Go Crazy. I mean, of course I know how to play Let's Go Crazy.
I was saying.
Yeah, doom back.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm talking Rush tunes, like country songs. I'm amazed because I've got, my own. I've got several thousand, like, 90s country. Drumeo, that deal, what Jared's done with that is unbelievable. Those transcriptions are so cool. And so when I went to do this gig, I bet on the song list, because there's Journey tunes, because Dean used to be the man, there's Tom Petty tunes, there's a bunch of Chicago tunes, a bunch of Russ Flats. I think there must have been about 10 out of the 20-some song list were already on Drumeo. I just went, oh, cool, there's Chicago Saturday in the Park, boom, boom, boom. You know how much time that saved me, not having to sit around? And then all I had to do is when I went to the rehearsal to ask your question, it's kind of funny. I'll throw it aside. The guys in the rehearsal basically, they're thrilled because they're like, "Oh man, cool! You're like know the parts, dude." And then all they had to do is tell me when, oh well, we don't do that this way. We change this, So you get that kind of thing arrangement. I do have the funny aside. Drum techs. Okay, I love drum techs and respect their job. It's hard, but drum techs so often are failed drummers. Are there? Whatever the case. I mean, I'm just going to call it the way it is.
This is a common theme that we've crossed.
Oh.
Maybe every time we talk. No, not every time. But we've visited this. You're fitting right on the lane where
they
drive.
Just got to tell you how everything should be because of how they would have done it. I'm like this drum tech for them, who is a friend of mine, and I love him, and I've told him this to his face, so I'm not trucking out of turn. Yeah. I was like, Holmes, there's a reason they called me. How about you just let me do my job?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not.
But seriously, they did call you.
I'm the most. I will. Man, you know me. I'm going to talk myself down 24/7. But don't tell me I'm going to do my job. I play drum set. That is my gig. You don't want me coming over there and like working on your Ableton rig. I'm not your guy. I can barely turn it on. I'm like,
but, Tom's like, let's get in there.
But if you're asking me to, analyze songs, learn the parts, and it was great because Jason Sheff, who's so sweet, he basically told the drum tech, hey, he's got it, man. Because the guy kept running over, giving me notes in between. He's like getting all excited, like during the song. No. I'm like, it's cool, dude. So back to the point of wiggle room. What's funny, Mike, is once you get in there and you play with them and they see you did your homework, then they're encouraging. It's like me. I mean, you see, I take insane liberties here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, if we're checking what I'm playing compared to what Mark actually plays, I mean, yes, I've actually transcribed Mark's parts. If we're playing All For You, I play his fills and stuff. But, if we're playing friggin' The Killers, I'm throwing in a bunch of, my little dumb Tony Williams, Vinnie Colaiuta, So it's kind of, you got to know your situation.
So as long as you're prepared, there's wiggle room with the band within reason.
Yeah,
but not with the drum techs.
One of the coolest gigs I ever did was with Wang Chung. I went and played with them in Singapore. We played with them right before Tracy hired me in 2012, and one show. If y'all even know who Wang Chung is,
I was about to ask you.
Yeah, everybody have fun tonight. Everybody,
that's
Wang
really
Chung,
what
that's Wang Chung.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
that was on my mind, and I was like, it's not that.
Dance All Days.
Yeah.
They had like 3 hits. They were like in the 80s, but Vinnie Colaiuta played on their records, so I loved them. And I'm into that kind of music. I always loved it. So my buddy, who's now is a heavy keyboard session player, David, he goes by Dave Ross Cohen, but it's Dave Cohen. He's like on everyone's albums in Nashville now, but we knew each other when we were touring together, and he worked for Joe Nichols, and he called me up one day and goes, hey man, you want to go to Singapore? And I'm like, yeah.
Why?
Yeah, no, I know. I was like, I don't want to get caned.
We're not getting caned, are we?
Which, by the way, the most beautiful city. I mean, I loved it. I would have loved to stay longer. What he was hiring me for was to play with this gal Tiffany, and I didn't connect the dots that it was that Tiffany. Like, do y'all, think we're alone now from the '80s, the big hit. She lives in Nashville, and so, well, turns out we go to rehearse with her and get involved with her. And then her manager calls and goes, hey, I also manage Wang Chung. They're on this same show. And also this guy, Howard Jones, who's a very famous 80s keyboards guy. It's like it's called Retrolicious. It was all 80s hits bands. And he's like, any chance you and the keyboard player want to double dip and get paid to back not only Tiffany, but also, Wang Chung? So like 2 different paydays and everything. I'm like, heck yeah.
Yes.
So back on your point, those guys, this is in the early days, I think it was Zoom, might have been Skype, but those guys live in England. And so we were just flying to Singapore. We'd meet them there and rehearse with them. Well, we had a talk-down session with them through Skype about the tunes and everything. And then we went over there, and, man, thing in Nashville, like, people show up prepared, man, like to the T, like every note. Whatever's on the record is what you learn. Then you may stray. And we got over there, and, like, the rehearsal went down so fast. I don't think we played any tune twice. They'd play, well, that sounded great. Okay, next one. No, okay. We can finally get that. And I can't do accents or anything, but in the very English way, they like Jack, the front man's like, you lads really did your homework, you know? And so then they're like, and then he goes, yes. And I'm just, Dave was really the musical director. I was just there as the drummer. And Dave, and he says, well, is there anything you guys would like to play? Anything we might play? Dave goes, well, Tom knows half your catalog. Like, he said, he learned all these too. And I'm like, yeah, could we do Warmer Side of Cool? There was this famous, from a movie, and, you know, like To Live and Die in LA, all this 80s stuff. And they thought it was the coolest thing. So out of that, because I did that, they ended up hiring me then to go play with them in Hong Kong.
That's cool.
But I didn't get to do it. They canceled the date. I was going to go to Hong Kong. I was like, man. And then I got hired by Tracy. So it's all good.
Okay, so I feel like music is taking you everywhere. Is there like one place that sticks out to you?
Oh, yeah.
That is just memorable, and you're like, I got to go back.
Singapore would definitely be great. I loved it. The way back in the day, before I came back here, after my first stint out here with T-Bone Brass, I was at University of North Florida, and I got hired to work in Hawaii. I played drums on the ship out of Honolulu, and so I was the show drummer for 4 months, and then we'd run the Hawaiian Islands. That was pretty awesome. I remember the first morning, that I was out there, I get up and we're off the Nepali coast of Kauai. Yeah. I'm thinking I've died and gone to heaven. I'm like 18. There's,
You might have, actually.
Yeah, dude, right? I'm like, wait a minute. I'm getting paid to play drums in the show upstairs on this ship, and, this is all I have to do, and, just show up, and of course, I'm, again, 18. There's lots of pretty girls on the ship, woo!
What a great
so
time.
I would say that, I did a USO tour where we went to, Kosovo and Macedonia, and that was really cool to see, just that whole part of the world. Different thing, makes you appreciate, seeing, because, that was after they had gone through all that Civil War. I mean, we were playing all the bases, played Camp Bondsteel, and that's their forward area from all the civil unrest and what would former Yugoslavia, basically. Damn. So I mean, I've there's places I haven't gone. Summer, my girlfriend and I are going to Greece in July. Just cruise, doing that.
Sure.
And she's been good about that. So the last 3 years we've done a lot. We both love to scuba dive. So we've been doing a lot in the Caribbean. She's helped me to remember that it's not all about gigs taking you places. You actually need to.
You can go. You don't have to have a
vacation. Exactly.
That's so funny.
But yeah, so those have been my big trips.
Gosh, Tom, you've had one hell of a career. You've been blessed. A lot of it is because you're a connector and you've come along the way, but your talent has spoken for you. You're a hard worker. I'm just thinking, because we have a lot of drummers that listen to this podcast, but also a lot of other artists too.
Absolutely.
I'm picturing somebody, maybe in Orlando, but maybe somewhere else. If there's somebody there's got to be a lot of people who look at you and think, I want to have that career. I want to do what you did.
Sure.
What would you say to somebody who wants to get to where you are? Now, it's a different time, and you teach, you're teaching the new generation coming up. Social media has come into play here. The internet's here. From your vantage point, how would you advise them? What would you tell them?
I think about this a lot because, I've done podcasts and things, and when that comes up, because people do look at how the disparate nature of, and what I always say to people is hey, look, I didn't make, maybe it's the wrong ways. Let's say it this way. I always have believed in casting a wide net. I see it as because you've got to be willing to leap and let the net appear. And I mean, for anything that sounds really cool I've done, I can think about, as you even said that, I remember feeling futility living in Berkeley in California. I'd moved out there with the band that What It Is band. Well, we were out there for a while, and our producer didn't really dig me and stuff, and I basically got fired from the band. And we're tight with the guys now, but it was pretty demoralizing, and I'm in California, and I'm working for North Face, and then I'm hearing these guys on the radio. Sister Hazel took off about that time, and I'm like, man, I'm a loser. I turned down the gig.
At North Face.
Yeah, I'm working at North Face, selling backpacks. I'm like, sure, I can.
It's on the store CD that plays on repeat.
Oh, dude, no, literally. I mean, the morning when All For You hit, I remember distinctly. I was a shipping manager at North Face and on Post Street in downtown San Francisco, and and I was out of my band. I wasn't really gigging much, but to the point why I bring that up is to say to anybody is that I've always called it kind of hopping from lily pad to lily pad, and again, why I'm so effusive about the guys. And Sister Hazel's, a lot of those lily pads for me were laid out because of them. After they had success, they went and helped me, and they recommended me. I mean, honestly, most of my gigs I've had since 2007, I'd been working in Nashville, but then I was out doing the Animal Kingdom stuff 05, 06, because the guy I had worked for had lost his record deal, a guy named Jed Hughes. And so I'm back out at the parks. Well, I went out and subbed for friends in Vegas for a month and got a call from this guy, the band leader in Nashville, said, hey, you know, we got your name through Jet Barris from Sister Hazel. He recommended you. And I went and it's for this guy, Trent Tomlinson. Trent's now a big songwriter, but he didn't really have a big career. But man, that one gig, every gig I've gotten in Nashville since 07, Tracy Lawrence saw me back then opening for him with Trent. And so typical circuitous answer to the question. Yeah. I always tell people, it's like, you really can't plan it. You've got to be willing to stay in the game. You got to be present to win, and you've got to be also constantly evolving. Like you said earlier about how the different gigs and stuff. To me, being out here and seeing drummers play shows, and then the reason I do play one-drop reggae things is that I played in reggae bands in Daytona Beach during spring break. I've played to empty rooms up and down the United States. I left Future Core to go on the road in my rock band, which, this is pretty funny, was called ISIS in 1991. Couldn't get away with that now.
Did not age well. Did not age well.
Yes, no. Not the dudes with the Toyotas in the desert.
By the way, there's a great bit that Shane Gillis does where he has ISIS car dealership. And he has to cut to, we are not those guys from the Middle East. And he goes, but we have a great deal on a Toyota. It's a good bit.
I didn't see that.
It's a great bit.
Oh my gosh, because that's my go-to. Anytime I talk about the band, I'm like, not the guys with the Toyotas. But in all seriousness, I mean, and funny enough, again, you know, the one thing that I feel like, and I don't know if it's maybe luck, life, you know, whatever. I mean, not to go way deep, but like reason I told you guys what I get kind of where this year's Infinity show hit me really hard with the whole, we were here. Well, you know, my dad died when I was 6. He was a cave diver, real avid, like he was an engineer, and he played drums. But, you know, I don't think he was like some incredible drummer, but he you know, just played for fun. But Dad was avid cave diver. I think he had like over 300 dives logged at the time of his death, and he mapped a lot of cave systems in North Florida. Well, man, you know, growing up as a kid, I mean, I did literally grow up in a trailer, and I can remember thinking, man, I don't know where I'll go in life. I was wondering if I'd graduate high school. And I think about how lucky I was to have Paul Roig, my drum instructor up at Gainesville High. The fact I had the band directors, it goes way back. It's a really circuitous answer to your question, is that I don't even know instinctively. My mom was great about supporting me, but I just sort of fell into things. I had good people. I had this guy Everett McCon. So many of my band directors were so good. Like Martha Stark, there's an award, FFCC award, the Martha Stark Award. That was my band director in high school. I kept falling from one great thing to another, and trust me, I was trying to screw it up. Like, I was Jethro back then. I just wasn't called Jethro. I'd like, no, man, I'm going to be out racing bikes. Oh, I'm going to be smoking weed with my buddies behind the whatever. And I mean, thankfully, these people helped me straighten out my life by high school, and you know, I ended up out here. I mean, like I said, I was down here in 85. I think I was, you know, senior in high school. I'd already marched for it a wave. I'd marched a year of drum corps again because of a cool instructor who this guy Steve Harris talked me into it. But to come back to it, if you're talking to somebody, I'd say to everybody, it's such a personal thing. Your path is completely unique. You don't choose it. It chooses you, at least to me. I mean, I'm not like I've got any absolutes, but I feel like you've got to remain flexible, and you've got to constantly, man, my big thing I harp on with students, be a perpetual student. I'm still trying to learn. I don't care, you know, I'll go to my grave trying to still like play Yellow After the Rain or something on marimba, and like Bub still can't piece it. That's why I call him Bubba. But he's like, are you still messing around? And funny enough, now after all these years, I actually do a lot of I teach a lot of, you know, entry-level percussion for our Tennessee State guys, because they're wonderful drum set players and good snare drummers, but they're not very good on keyboard percussion, or they maybe don't play timpani. And I'm no great shakes, but I've got basic training. Right. So the point of even more long-winded to stay with that theme is that the more versatile you are, the more diverse. You know, my Achilles heel is I've been lazy about all the electronics. Like you asked me about Ableton, I have those things now, but man, you know how many years I kind of avoided that? Just being lazy, intellectually, just, you know, somebody will do it. And I've been fortunate, but then a few years ago, my buddy David Black got hurt. He was Easton Corbin's drummer for years. Well, it gets hurt right before they're starting the second leg of the Carrie Underwood tour in 2016, and they're doing her Storytellers tour, and it's all, you know, arenas. And he's like, hey, the band leader calls me. He's like, Tom, any chance, what are you doing this fall? Because they knew I wasn't with Tracy at that time, with Lawrence. Tracy was taking vocal rest. I said, well, man, actually, I'm pretty open. I'm just teaching and stuff. So I ended up going on that Carrie tour and did 45 dates for 4 or 5 months. I mean, we played Madison Square Garden. We played Staples Center, sold out in the round. And Easton's, funny enough, Easton Corbin's from Trenton, Florida. He grew up outside Gainesville. Like his granddad knew one of my mom's best friends. I mean, it's that kind of thing.
Yeah, he's a little bit more country than that.
I
dude.
just love
I smell what you're stepping in over there.
You cast such a wide net that a call can come at any time from anywhere.
That's the thing, Mike. Honestly, I think you got to say it's the degree of it's like, you said about other drummers. I'll own that. I don't know that everybody's going to have my life. But I've also, let's call it the other way. I can remember driving to Nashville weekly, sometimes just to play the Grand Ole Opry for one song from Gainesville. I'd drive up, play the Opry. I'd sleep in my car somewhere outside of get down south of Atlanta so I wouldn't be stuck in traffic in the morning. And then I'd be back in Gainesville the next day still teaching lessons at my house because nobody in Nashville knew I didn't live in Nashville. I did that because I went up there in 98 with this band House of Dreams, 97, 98, right when I came back from California. And we had a record deal, RCA, we had management in Nashville, did the whole thing for like 2 years, recorded an album out in California. If y'all have ever seen Sound City, the movie that Dave Grohl did.
Oh no, we didn't.
Okay,
no,
if you ever see that, if you ever get a chance, watch it. It's so good. But the studios Sound City is where like Damn the Torpedoes, Fleetwood Mac, everything. Right next door is Goodnight L.A. is the studio where we did our album for this band House of Dreams, and we joked about we call it House of Debt, but we were signed to RCA New York. I mean, we had the whole real label thing, and the radio hated it. The album didn't get released, and that's why that connected me in Nashville. I started, those guys that were the writers in that band stayed in Nashville. I came back to Gainesville and started finishing my degree. Sure. That's around the time I started doing all the drum. I was teaching Buchholz and doing all that. Yeah. And fast forward though, if you talk to me at that point, 1999, 2000, man, I'm like, oh, I'm not going anywhere. I guess my days are over with it. Well, 6 months later, you know what I get a call for? Our old attorney who had represented House of Dreams goes, hey, Tom, there's this guy that I'm representing. He's playing tonight. His name's John Mayer. You need to go see him. John was touring in a van with Dave LaBriere, just them as a duo, and they came to play in Jacksonville. He's like, what are you doing tonight? You got to go over and see these guys. I think you'd be perfect. They're looking for a drummer. And I'm like, okay. I said, yeah, dude. I was driving past the University of Florida campus. I think I was going to go out with my buds, somewhere to, I don't know, just hang out. I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. It's like a Wednesday night. So I drive over to Jacksonville, to the south side of Jacksonville, and John Mayer has got a line of girls.
Sure.
Outside. And now, mind you, this is the age of MySpace, dude. Ain't nobody know. This is his first time in Florida, and there's a line down the street, and they're just playing as a duo, basically acoustically. And so I go in. My name's at the door. Nick had called the Farrar, and Nick, by the way, Farrar was also Sister Hazel attorney. So he represented Matchbox 20. He represented. That's how it happens. Somebody in the industry that knows you knows what you can do and thinks, hey man, you'd be a good fit. So fast forward is that John, I go and meet John and hang out with him afterwards. He's like, well, why don't you come up to Atlanta, man? We got to finish this tour with this band OAR, and then why don't you come up in 2 weeks and let's play. And I went up there and I played for like 3 hours with John. We jammed, played through Room for Squares. The album is just coming out, like, the original first record. He was really cool. He was like, they were like, man, you play great. I don't think you're the right fit for us. I was older than them. Yeah. I mean, you see me, I'm a big old dorky guy, and these guys are the coolest dudes in the room. I mean, you've seen John Mayer, and I'm like, and he couldn't have been, how cool is that? I got to jam with him for 3 hours. Heck, he was like cutting it out of his own songs. He's cutting into giant steps. I mean, that boy's a player. Yeah. So I've had those kind of things. I've got I could give you a laundry list of bands I didn't get the gig. I auditioned for Dennis DeYoung of Styx, didn't get the gig. He didn't like how he said I looked too much like him. The hair. Seriously, literally, the band leader was pissed. The band leader's a friend of mine. And he's like, man, he gonna go with this rock dude out of L.A. because he doesn't like your look. My friend is like this killing gospel bass player, band leader, musical director, and he's like, and we're buds, and he's like, I'm sorry, Tom. I said, dude, hey, I got the audition for Dennis DeYoung. I don't care.
And that's a win.
So, yeah, that's when you come back to like talking to a drummer or to a musician, I always say, man, you've got your own personal sphere of influence. And for me, I by accident cast a wide net. Honestly, sometimes out of happenstance, it's a good thing. I get bored with music. Maybe like we talked about being interested about BMX or things like that. a guy I raced BMX in my old man BMX class a couple of years ago is the video director for like Jason Aldean and Kenny Chesney. And he's the same way. His name's Sean. And like, we don't talk music. We're like out there talking about our 24-inch racing cruisers.
Are you still doing BMX?
I go race once in a while just for fun. Much to the chagrin of like when I was still working for TL, I actually brought my bike on the back. I was coming to bus call one night. I had raced earlier it was a Friday night race. And he's like, Tom, don't break your damn wrist.
Imagine.
We're getting ready to head out.
Yeah.
Well, to give TL all the credit in the world, I mean, he let me fly in for shows when I was in grad school at UF. I'd be taking like a curriculum course at UF on a Thursday night and have to be in, I don't know, somewhere in Texas or Oklahoma or wherever the next day. And I'd have flights booked. Yeah. But our poor tour managers up, they're like, their bus rolled out, from Nashville without a drummer. They're like, well, hope Tom makes it.
It was just wild
in
card.
classes, flying out.
The
for
UF, everybody at UF got a kick out of it.
Wow.
I got to say, the faculty, I can't say enough about them at Florida. They were so good to me. UF's notorious sometimes for not being great about that historically, but man, everybody from Dr. Odom to David Waybright, a lot of those. Scott Wilson was who brought me down there. I was a graduate assistant, so they were paying for everything, and it's that kind of thing. Like, man, I would never have done that on my own. He called me up again, same kind of deal. Just reached out there. Everybody texted me and goes, "Hey, you want to do your master's?" I'm like, and then ironically enough, my son and his mom and I kind of talked about it, and we knew we were going to split, but we were amicable. And I said, "Hey, this might be a way for us to kind of do a nesting plan where we can share the house, get me out, I'll get kind of out of your way, but we can be there for our son."
Yeah.
And it worked out great. And man, I mean, I owe Scott, like, 4 different university jobs, 6 years now. I mean, collectively, I just ironically interviewed for Troy State. I'm not going to be the guy, but you know who Robert Smith is, right?
Yeah. Oh, I composer was for him.
Well,
and now his wife is running the company. Yep. Susan.
Okay, so Susan Smith and John Campese wanted me to interview for that position only because of my background. I was like, y'all know I don't know anything about arranging or composing. I mean, Robert had more talent in his pinky.
He was so good.
I mean, the guy's one of the greats of all time. I'm like, he's everything to me. I owe Robert. I mean, we did our Future Core record with him up at James Madison back in 1990 or whenever we recorded it. And he's one of the people that really encouraged me to go get my master's and start teaching collegiately. So I interviewed with them week before last, and I mean, we were very candid. I was like, guys, I don't want to waste your time. I mean, they had my CV and my resume as it is. I'm like, you know what I don't know? And they're like, no, we really are impressed with what you have done. And I said, well, it's great. One of the sticking points, I'm not moving to Troy, Alabama, and that's a 300-mile commute. I'll commute down to Lee. I'm like, I don't know if I'm doing, and I'd have to be down there multiple days. Plus, too, they need an administrator.
Yeah,
I'm not that guy. I know what I'm not. But I was.
Know what you're not.
Yeah, and I would. But this is back to our point. There's still a point. You still got to take the interview. You still got to reach out because now you know what they want me to do. They're going to have me consult a little bit. That's how this stuff works. Say yes to everything.
We do the same thing in the theme parks. It's audition for everything.
Yeah.
And then decide if you want to do it.
Exactly.
Like if they offer it to you, then you can figure it out.
You'll never know if you don't throw your hat in the ring.
Yep.
Tom, one thing I got out of this is it won't ever happen the way you think it's going to happen.
Exactly.
And a lot of artists, they have big dreams. I think
There's
that's
nothing wrong
part
with
of the
that.
reason why they probably got into it too.
Yeah.
But if it's meant for you, and I think it may not be a tour, it may not be a studio that you work with or whatever contract that you're looking for, but what it will be something maybe even better than that you never saw coming.
Vision. You got to be it's okay. Whatever, when we say dream, you've got a vision that you want to cast out there. Man, don't limit that. I mean, I'm still guilty. You would think I would be really good. No, I'm terrible about sometimes not manifesting things because I'm like, well, no, that'll never happen to me. And then it still does, but I could have, like something Mike just said, going for the auditions. You know how many things I didn't audition for out here? Oh, I could never play that show. And thank goodness some of those people kind of kicked me in the butt. Eddie Metz, again, Hurst, get over here. You can do this. And I remember it was like Disney's, Mickey's 'Twas the Night Before Christmas show. And what's that guy? Kiker, one of the drummers that's over here. I can't think of his last name now. Mark something Spicer, I don't know, whatever. He plays it, and I was like, Mark said, Tom, just throw your hat in the ring, get involved, and it's the same thing, like playing Candlelight out here for Danny Gottlieb. He's like my hero. I grew up worshiping, and Danny's calls me up, hey man, you want to cover for me for these dates? Jethro, 20-something Jethro would be like, that never happened. I at least now have enough confidence just to go, well, I'll give it a try. So yeah, I think that's the thing when you talk about artists, you gotta don't sell yourself short, and be willing to. The biggest thing is that you don't limit yourself. I just cannot harp on that enough. I don't think because, like you said, 8 years as Tracy Lawrence's drummer, he used to joke about it. He's like, Tom knows nothing about country, but I think it's why I like him, because what my connection was is because of my background playing swing and jazz and all the big band stuff. Yeah. I fit into a Texas swing kind of country gig.
Sure.
So it's all about being versatile.
An academic professor, a connector, a live musician. Tom, this was incredible. Thank you so much for talking with us, man.
Thank you for doing this. I'm doing all this work.
We're on a tour bus, folks.
So cool,
it's
man.
so glamorous.
So good, man.
Great. Hey, fellas, come crowd back in the lounge.
God.
No, again, it means a lot to me. Like Mike mentioned, I'm really honored. And I think it's so cool what y'all are doing, man. It's the tech side of it, Leon. It's impressive.
It's great. I'm enamored. Man. I'm enamored with you. Thank you so much for having me, man.
It's a pleasure,
thank
man.
You.
Right back at you
Please,
guys,
thank
man.
you.
Thank you, fellas. I appreciate y'all doing this. And
man.
I just wish you all the success with it, too.
Absolutely.
In fact, you're doing it like this. I have no doubt you will do it. It's impressive.
Cool.
All right.
That's a wrap.
Awesome, guys.
Yeah,
go for it.
Basically, I'm on Instagram. It's Jam and Jethro. What am I? Jam and
Jethro.
TH Drums is it's ridiculous. What I am is the worst self promoter ever. But of course on Facebook and stuff. TomHurst.com is my website. I barely know how to use it, but that's pretty much it. And then of course all the stuff we talked about.
Yeah. You'll see me around Nashville. There it is, folks. Catch you next time.